Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story comes from California, but its shadow reaches far beyond state lines. It's a story about politics, loyalty, and how one man's hidden connection to a foreign government shocked the United States. This is the case of Yaoning Mike Sun, a California political advisor who has now pleaded guilty to secretly acting as an agent for the Chinese government. At first glance, Mike Sun looked like any other campaign strategist. He was active in community politics, helped local candidates, and built connections across Los Angeles. But behind that local facade, federal investigators say he was working on something much bigger, an influence operation that reached all the way back to Beijing. According to the Department of Justice, Sun began his work in 2022. At that time, he served as a campaign advisor for a candidate running for city office in Arcadia, California. His job seemed simple: help the campaign communicate with voters, manage online messaging, and promote the candidate's platform. But what most people didn't know was that he was secretly taking direction from officials inside the People's Republic of China. Court documents reveal that Sun didn't act alone. He communicated with individuals connected to the Chinese government who told him exactly what kind of political messaging they wanted to see on U.S. soil. Their goal was not to win a local election. It was to plant influence, shape opinions, and build a network that could serve Beijing's interests. Investigators say Sun ran a website tied to the campaign, but the content on that site was far from ordinary. It quietly carried pro-Beijing narratives, echoing messages that supported China's policies and softened its global image. Every post, every update, was carefully aligned with what Chinese officials asked him to promote. When the FBI began looking closer, they found emails and messages showing that Sun had directly reported his work to Chinese officials. He even drafted reports describing how his campaign activities were helping Beijing's interests in the United States. In one of those reports, he requested financial support from Chinese government contacts to expand his influence efforts in California. Under U.S. law, any person working at the direction or control of a foreign government is required to register with the Department of Justice as a foreign agent. Sun never did. Instead, he concealed his relationship and kept operating under the radar until the truth came out. In 2024, federal agents uncovered the scheme. The investigation revealed how Sun's work was part of a broader effort by China to cultivate relationships at every level of U.S. politics, not just in Washington, but also in small towns and city halls across the country. During questioning, Sun admitted he had coordinated with another man, Jun Chen, who had previously been charged in a similar case. Together, they worked to identify local political opportunities that could quietly advance China's interests. They proposed ways to influence community leaders and to use local campaigns as a way to build goodwill toward Beijing. Federal prosecutors called this a clear violation of national security laws. Acting U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada said Sun's actions represented a deliberate attempt to manipulate the American political process. The DOJ emphasized that this wasn't a simple case of unregistered lobbying. It was an act of foreign interference. Sun's guilty plea means he now faces up to 10 years in federal prison. The court is expected to hand down sentencing after reviewing his cooperation and the scope of his activities. Prosecutors say his plea sends a strong message to anyone who attempts to operate as an undeclared foreign agent inside the United States. The most striking part of this case is how ordinary it seemed on the surface. A local election, a campaign advisor, a website, nothing about it screamed espionage or subversion. But that's exactly why it worked. It blended perfectly into normal life. Arcadia, California, is a peaceful suburb known for its cultural diversity. For residents, local elections are about community issues, not international politics. Yet, while voters debated housing and city budgets, a silent operation was unfolding behind the scenes, one that had nothing to do with sidewalks or schools, and everything to do with global influence. According to investigators, Sun's operation was part of a larger network that sought to insert pro-China messaging into local American politics. It wasn't about controlling votes directly. It was about shaping narratives and building long-term influence. Every small step, every connection, helped strengthen Beijing's soft power presence within the U.S. Legal experts say the Foreign Agents Registration Act, or FARA, is designed exactly to prevent this kind of hidden influence. It ensures transparency, requiring anyone acting on behalf of a foreign government to publicly disclose their activities. But in practice, enforcement has often been weak, and many cases go unnoticed until years later. Sun's guilty plea marks one of the rare instances where local-level political interference has been caught and prosecuted. It also highlights the growing concern among U.S. intelligence agencies that foreign powers are using non-traditional routes, like local elections and community organizations, to gain a foothold in American society. The case also raises important questions. How many similar influence operations might be active but undiscovered? How deep does this problem go at the local level? And how can small political campaigns protect themselves from being used as instruments of foreign agendas without even realizing it? Sun's case has already caused ripples across California's political circles. The candidate he worked for, identified in court records only as Individual 1, has not been charged with any crime. But the campaign is now under scrutiny, and federal officials are investigating whether anyone else was aware of Sun's foreign ties. For the U.S. government, this case is more than just one man's crime. It's a wake-up call. It shows how easily foreign governments can exploit open democratic systems. Local campaigns often run on trust, volunteerism, and small budgets. That makes them vulnerable to outside manipulation, especially when the people offering help appear professional, resourceful, and well-connected. Sun's background gave him credibility. He had business experience, language skills, and community respect. He positioned himself as a cultural bridge, someone who could help candidates connect with Chinese American voters. But while he played that public role, he secretly served another master. When federal agents confronted him, he reportedly admitted that his work was guided by individuals linked to the Chinese Ministry of State Security. These contacts instructed him to highlight positive stories about China, counter criticism of Beijing's policies, and quietly identify political figures who could be cultivated as friends of China. For U.S. authorities, this kind of influence campaign falls into a gray zone. It's not espionage in the traditional sense, but it undermines transparency and national sovereignty. It's about information, access, and narrative control. When the plea was announced, the DOJ stated that no foreign government should be allowed to secretly shape American political life. The agency reaffirmed that anyone operating under foreign direction must disclose it or face severe consequences. Sun's sentencing will depend on the court's assessment of his cooperation and the seriousness of his activities. Prosecutors say he fully admitted his role and described the directives he received from Chinese officials. That admission could reduce his prison time, but the conviction itself will remain a major precedent. The bigger question is how many similar cases might exist quietly in the background, Over the past few years, U.S. authorities have charged several individuals for acting as undeclared agents of China, from tech executives to political consultants. Some were accused of gathering information, others of spreading propaganda or tracking dissidents. The pattern is consistent: a web of quiet influence reaching deep into American institutions. In this case, the operation centered not on Washington, but on a city council race in Southern California. That's what makes it both unusual and alarming. It shows that foreign interference doesn't always happen at the national level. Sometimes it begins in small towns, through community organizations and local campaigns that seem harmless until you look closer. The Justice Department has described these influence networks as part of China's long-term strategy to shape global opinion and policy from the ground up. By embedding loyal voices in local institutions, Beijing can slowly normalize its narratives and build social influence over time. For ordinary Americans, this case is a reminder of how global politics can quietly seep into local life. The neighbor helping with a campaign website, the consultant writing press releases, sometimes their motivations are not what they appear to be. In the courtroom, Sun appeared calm when he entered his plea. He acknowledged his guilt and agreed to cooperate with authorities. His attorney stated that Sun never intended to harm the United States, but prosecutors argued that his deliberate concealment of foreign control proved otherwise. The FBI called the case a success in the ongoing effort to protect American democracy from covert foreign interference. Agents emphasized that transparency is not optional, and that anyone working for a foreign government, whether for money, ideology, or influence, must be honest about it. After the hearing, officials said they hoped the case would serve as a deterrent. They warned that foreign governments are constantly seeking to exploit open societies, and that citizens should be alert to manipulation disguised as cultural outreach or community engagement. This case has also reignited debate over how FARA should be enforced. Some lawmakers argue that the law needs to be modernized to better capture modern influence operations, including social media campaigns and digital propaganda. Others say enforcement simply needs more resources, not new rules. Whatever the outcome, the message is clear. Even local politics can become a battlefield for global influence. The story of Mike's Son shows how a simple community campaign can be turned into a channel for foreign messaging, and how difficult it can be to detect until it's too late. For now, Son awaits sentencing. His case will likely be cited in future FARA prosecutions as an example of how hidden influence can operate at the city level. It also shows how seriously the Justice Department is treating foreign interference, even when it happens far from Washington. In the end, this story isn't just about one man's guilt. It's about the vulnerability of open democracies and the price of complacency. It reminds us that influence doesn't always come with spies or secret codes. Sometimes it comes with campaign flyers, smiling consultants, and quiet conversations that steer the narrative in subtle ways. Son's guilty plea brings this chapter to a close, but it also opens a larger question. Who else might be quietly shaping the political conversations happening in small towns across America? And how prepared are we to notice before it happens again? Because in a world where information is power, silence can be the loudest weapon of all.